It's 2026 and knowing just pieces of data engineering is not enough. So you can write SQL, you can write Python in a notebook, and you have also followed some end-to-end tutorials. But here's the truth. The real world does not care about if you know like 10 to 50 tools or you know just one step of data engineering. It cares whether you can take a messy business problem and turn into a deployed, reliable data product that people can actually use it. That's what 99% of the content skips. And here's what I have for you. Most data engineering tutorials jump straight into tools. We are starting with the problem what 99% people skip. From there, we'll break it down using Kimball modeling and turn that problem into a real Star Schema. Then we'll build Azure infrastructure from scratch, followed by Databricks, Unity Metastore, and access setup the right way. I'll show you why external location and storage credential matter and how to debug database access issues like in production. We'll write ETL using autoloader, create Lakeflow jobs, and promote them using database asset bundles. And everything gets deployed with GitHub Actions end-to-end CI/CD. Then we'll explore Genie and show you how awesome it is. And then finish it by visualizing the data with API. And this is just the trailer. And if you want to think like a data engineer, this tutorial is for you. So let's get started. 99% of the data engineering content that I see online directly jump into like this is the architecture of the project and this is how you will set up the infrastructure, but in real world that does not happen, right? So you basically get a problem statement from a business user or from your user and you have to derive like how do I solve it. So there's a step by step process that you have to follow, and in this video I'm going to show you like how you will think like a data engineer. How do you derive a solution from a problem. So this is how exactly you will get a problem statement in data engineering. And so basically you get in a call with a business user and a business user tells you the problem that they are facing currently. So let's have this problem statement and let's go through this problem statement first. So we are talking about that we have a healthcare organization. I'm calling it as Apex Health Hospital. So that operates a large multi-hospital network across several cities, serving thousands of patients every month. So basically, this is a hospital chain that is present in every other cities in your country, and this is very big hospital chain, right? But recently, they have observed a growing issue of patients getting readmitted within 30 days of discharge, right? So, these readmissions are creating multiple challenges for the hospital network. So, basically, what's happening is suppose you are getting admitted to a particular hospital because of some disease and you got diagnosed, you got fine, and you got discharged from the hospital, but within the 30 days you got admitted to the hospital with the same disease, right? So let's see like why this is not a good thing for any hospital, right? So first thing first, this adds a lot of financial impact for the hospital. Means that many resubmissions or many readmissions are not reimbursed or result in reduced payment because insurers and government schemes treat them as a treatment failure. So in a lot of developed countries or like a lot of foreign countries, if it happens, resubmission readmissions happen, so they do not get reimbursed from your maybe insurer or from your government, right? So this is a lot of financial impact that happens due to this, right? And it also adds a lot of operational pressure. Means that reduce bed availability for new patients. So if the existing patients are getting readmitted due to the same issues, then you are not having the bed availability for new patients, right? And the last but not the least, that patient outcome and experience. So you can think about like if you're getting admitted with the same reason, you will not have a good feedback for that hospital, right? You will not have a good experience from it. You'll not trust that particular hospital. So these are some of the impacts that you'll have due to this resubmissions. So see, this is how you get the requirement for a business user. So you'll not get something like, okay, you pull the data from here, you do some analysis in Spark, you give me the result as a dashboard. So all your problem statement will be as a lot of paragraphs in English, and your job as a data engineer or a data architect, you have to understand what is the pain point and how do you solve this particular problem, right? So this is where I'm gonna help you. So whenever you are solving any data engineering problem, don't just think from a technical perspective. First, have a business mind in place, right? Just understand what is the business need, right? So few of the business need that you get from, and this all comes from experience, right? Once you suppose you have a lot of experience working with healthcare field, then you understand this all the business need automatically. Either you read a lot of articles or you have the experience of on that particular field, this will come naturally, right? So don't worry about whenever you get any problem as such. So with experience, you'll try to understand the business issues more clearly and you can take actions. So some of the business need that we have currently, right? That we have to highlight diseases and procedures that drive the majority of resubmissions or readmissions. So basically highlighting the disease and the procedures, right? And compare performance across branches, doctors and department. It might happen that, okay, readmissions are happening across one particular branch, or maybe because of some of the doctors, or maybe one of the departments having a lot of resubmissions. So these are the things that business want to understand so that they can take some action. And basically the last one, identify 30-day readmissions, right? In past 30 days, how many patients were like readmitted due to the same disease. So this is what you clarify from a business user. You get on a meeting with them and you understand their business need, and you just define, okay, these are three of the goals that I've defined. So this is very important, and this is very important that you talk to your business user and you lock that, okay, these are the things that I'm going to solve you, and you do a agreement on that, okay, these are the things that I'm planning to solve through this particular project, right? So that's very important, and because the transparency between you and the business user is really crucial in any data engineering project. I'm talking about all this because of my experience working in data engineering field, because these skills are very very important, that not only writing your SQL code or Python code, but understanding the business need, having a good conversation with the business to understand the business problem really adds a lot of value. So always concentrate on this. Now the question is, from the business problem, how do you solve this particular problem? Like what's the approach that you should follow? So Kimball's have a very Kimball dimension modeling approach is a very popular approach to model your data, right? So we'll just follow this particular approach. I'm not going to talk in very much details about what does Kimball dimension modeling does, but I'll talk about like what the overall approach that you should follow while you're thinking about data modeling, right? So first, identifying the business process that we already defined, declare the grain. So think about like whenever you are storing one row in that particular table, right? Suppose you are calculating anything, right? What that particular row signifies? Is it like per customer every day? Like what's the grain of it, right? Are you collecting the data every day, every hour, or every month? So this is what you have to decide at first, right? So you have to talk to your business user. You have to understand, okay, do you need this particular report daily or monthly? Depending on that, you have to define, okay, I have to collect this data every day, or I have to collect this data every hour, right? So that's really important. You have to decide the grain first. Then identify the dimensions. Dimension means what, like who did it what, right? Something like, okay, I need patient information, so patient can be a dimensions. So you understand, okay, who is that particular person, so that's where the who comes from the dimensions, right? Identifying the facts, basically what you are trying to measure, right? Maybe measure means something that you can put some numbers into. Like for example, for this particular problem, you can think about like, okay, the visit, like how many times they have visited, maybe that number of times that they visited, that could be one fact, right? So this is, and all this I'm talking about, like there are, you can read about a lot of use cases, like you can identify the retail, or you can e-commerce or healthcare. You understand, okay, these are some of the dimension that it can have, these are some of the facts that it can have. But as you get the experience working in the projects, you'll understand, okay, these are the dimension that it should have, these are the fact that it should have. This also comes with experience and learning about the business, right? So that's really important. So we have identified, okay, I want to do resubmission analysis, declare the grain is daily, and identify the dimension. Currently, let's start with patient as a dimension, because we want to understand what are the patients, what are the hospital, because there are multiple hospitals. What are the diagnosis meant, is it like due to fever or cough or like malaria or anything, right? Identifying the facts, so basically we want to store how many visits happen for that particular patient, right? So we define, okay, these are the things that I have to get in place. So depending upon that, you just do a rough idea, okay, for this particular table, like if I want to get patient, I want to get all this information, right? Patient ID, last name, first name, gender, date of birth, city, depending upon, or same as for hospital, you want to get hospital ID, hospital name, city, bed count. Similar for diagnosis, you want to get diagnosis code and diagnosis description, right? And also you define what is the fact that you need, right? So this is the fact that I'm going to need, because I want to get one per one visit per row. So that's why I want to get like what is the patient ID. So in fact, you basically have all the primary keys. So if you think clearly, from patient, you have a patient ID. So basically store the patient ID here, similar for hospital ID, similar for diagnosis code. And you just define, okay, these are the visit happen and how much cost. So this is basically fact. And what's the admission date, what's the discharge date. So right, so every time the patient admits to that particular hospital, you get one row per visit. So every time you visit, you store one row into that table. So that's the grain, right? So every visit, one row, that's the grain. And basically this is how you define your facts and the dimension. And then you define the relationship. Currently this is the you call it as a star schema, because it looks like a star. You define all the dimension and you have the visit in place, right? So this is one way to model your data, to understand, okay, this is how I want to store the data. Now you understood, okay, this is how I want to model the data, but you have to create the ETL pipeline out of it, right? So you have to get this data from somewhere, maybe clean it, store it, aggregate it, do something else. So how do you do that? So Databricks has a medallion architecture that is very popular currently, and that usually a lot of data projects follow it, right? So basically, for building reliable performant data pipelines with Delta Lake, you basically define, okay, you can have batch or streaming. All the data you get into a branch table. So this is the raw ingestion. So whatever data you get in your raw systems, you just store it. Then you filter it, clean it, augment it, then you store it into silver, and then you define the business level aggregate. So this is the gold data, and this is from here you get all the reporting and all the ML stuff happen. So this is a guideline that you have, right? So every stage you get some good quality of data, right? From bronze to silver to gold. Like this is the standard that people follow to create any ETL pipeline currently. So we'll also follow this medallion architecture for for developing our ETL pipeline. I'm going to talk about like when I'm showing you the code, like how do I define all these layers. This is like we'll be following the medallion architecture, but let's see how our architecture for the project come here. So you see that we are not directly jumping into the architecture. First we understood our problem statement from English statement, then we understood the business process that we need to have in place. We understood what's the business need, and we also understood how we model the data, right? Then we'll talk about the architecture of the project. Then once you understand the whole data space, that's when will think about like, okay, what are the components that I need to make sure that this is how I do this, how I solve this particular problem, right? So for us, right, what happens is for all the electronic health record, right, it stores. So all the hospitals or a lot of systems, healthcare system uses something called as fast healthcare interoperability resources, that is called as FHIR data standard. So all this data is stored in a system called a hospital EHR systems, right? There are a lot of popular systems like Epic, Sunner, and etc. What happens is you store this data in a FHIR data standard. Then you have a lot of services, something for example, for in Azure you have something called as Azure FHIR service. What it does, it can get the data out of from here. So suppose you want to get all the patient data, you pull the data from there and you store it into a staging area, right? Similarly for whatever diagnosis, whatever hospital, and whatever visits, because all this data is stored in a EHR system, right? So every time a patient come, the data is logged to the ES system. So this can pull the data, this can pull the whole snapshot of the data, and it also can do incremental loading, right? So as soon as new data gets added, you can pull the data and store it into a staging area. So so we can also do that, right? Then you'll have all the bronze, silver, gold, that will stay in ADLS, right? ADLS bucket, and we'll be using Azure Databricks to do all this stuff. So I'll not talk about here like where we calculate the dimension, where we calculate the facts. I'll be showing you in the code, but everything that you see here, all the transformation, all the things that we do in ETL, we'll be doing in Azure Databricks. Will schedule everything in Azure Database, so you don't have to move out of Azure Database to anything else. We'll also see how do you visualize the data. So visualization happens on the gold layer, and you can also have API access from gold data. So from our project, I'll not be able to show you this part of the code because I don't have the infrastructure that I can store. I can show you that. So I'm going to show you directly from a staging layer, where you can think about like all these dimensions, fact, data can be stored as a CSV file. So let's think that I have a FHIR service in Azure that extracted everything and that store all the data into a staging as a CSV file. From there onwards, we'll see like how do you define different dimension, how do you clean it, how do you aggregate inside everything inside a Azure Databricks, right? So this is how my infrastructure will look like. And while I talk about the Azure Databricks pipeline, it will make it more clearer. But I wanted to give you a like a 100-feet picture, like how exactly you will come here, right? So I hope that you enjoyed this particular section. And in the next section, we'll see like how do you set up everything that we see here. So let's start the setup first. So all you have to do is like just search for Azure free account and you'll get the first link. So what we're gonna do is like in Azure you basically can create Azure free account and you'll get a $200 credit that is available for 30 days, and that's enough to learn all these things, right? And you will get all the services that exist in data Azure, and you can use all those for free. but you're gonna need a credit card to create an account, to create the account for this particular Azure free account. But one good thing is, even if you exhaust this $200 in your free account, they will not charge you for any other services, right? So you'll not be able to use any particular service. You can upgrade to as pay as you go, but that's not needed. So basically, if you do not want to spend anything, just use the Azure free account. I can guarantee this, that you will not get charged for using any other services until and unless you upgrade to pay as you go, right? That you don't do that. So just use this as your free account. So let's get started. And if you don't have a credit card, just use your friends or use your family to get you one. Yeah, I think you'll be charged like 2 rupees, and even that 2 rupees will be refunded to you. And if you are in US, maybe $1 or $2, right? So basically you have to pick another account. So if you don't have any account currently in Microsoft, just create a one, and you can just use your Gmail account to create one. Once you're done, then you can start doing that, right? So basically I'm using this particular email ID, so just you pick that particular account. So this is the first screen that you'll have. So you have to give your country, your first name, last name, email address, phone number, and the company name. That's the option part. Then you just do a next. This is the second screen where you basically have to give some address. So you can give your home address here and just do a next. In the third step, this is where you'll be giving your credit card information. So it accepts only the Visa and MasterCard. So you have to get some Visa and MasterCard credit card to use this, and give all these accounts, and then just do next. It will ask you to set up some, it will ask you for some OTP and all that. So after you are done, and once you do the login, this is the first how the screen will look like, right? So this is pretty easy. Just if you face any issue, just let me know in the comment section that okay, this is the issue. I'll be able to help you in that. So first thing first, what we're going to do, we're going to create something called as resource group. So think about like this is a logical container that you create, and you create all the resources inside it. So take care of the billing and all the good stuff, right? The permission model and all that. Just think about a logical container where you keep all the resources at a place, right? So search for resource group. You'll get something like this. Then create one. You can keep the subscription as it is. You can give any resource name. Let me give it as a Nirvan Decodes. Do a next. You can add some tags that is not required for us. Then review and create. So you see that the resource got created, and this is the resource group that I just created, right? And this is where we'll be doing all our resource creation, right? So you can go to create here, create button, and first let's create a storage account where we will be storing all our data. So search for storage account. This is the one. This create resource group. You select whatever you just created, you just use that particular account, or if you haven't created before, you can create from here, right? This should be a unique storage account name, because that's required, because see, I have already had this previously, so I'm not able to use this. So anyone decodes storage, anyone decode storage, I hope that this is available. Okay, this is available. You can choose the particular region and the storage type, right? You can choose the storage type. So I can do this Azure blob storage or Azure data lake storage. Then to primary workload, you can define what type of workload that you need. You can also avoid that, right? For now, I'll be using the ALRAs to keep the cost as low as possible, but you can define what type of redundancy you need, right? I'll do a next, and it's very important that you select this particular checkbox, because you're gonna need the folder inside it. Once you do that, go next. These things are not required for us. You will go to review, and once everything is good, it will go give you a check mark and you're good to go. It will take some time to get it created. You see that you can go to that resource, that this is how my storage looks like, right? Now there's a shortcut to do, go to the resource group, because we want to create the database workspace here. So you can just click here, it will take you to the resource group. So you see that one resource is created. Now I need a Databricks workspace. So you do a data create, you search for Databricks. Yeah, you got the Azure Databricks, create. You select the resource group, you give it a name like Anirvan Decodes. You can select the trial premium, because that's exactly what we're gonna need. We can use the trial to keep it the cost low. And this is the managed resource group that you want to create, right? So basically what happens is you already have a resource group that is named as Anirvan Decodes, but whenever you're creating a workspace, you tell database, okay, database, you can create one more resource group and you keep everything that you need inside that resource group. So this is one way to deploy workspace. There is something called as vnet injected workspace. So basically you create your resource group and you ask, okay, database, I don't want you to use any managed resource group, but you create all your resources into this particular yeah, vnet, right? So all those things can you do, but for the simplicity, let's use the managed resource group. So you can mention it as an anyone decodes. Maybe I'll name this as manage group 1, because I already created one manage group previously, but you can give any name here, right? So networking, these things are fine. I don't think anything is required here. Yeah, this is validating. Once everything is good, you can just create it, and it takes some time. It takes some few minutes to get it completed, so just wait for that to be completed. Once it is done, I'll show you like what to do next. So till the time it takes some time to get it completed, I want to just mention that a lot of folks watch my video there, but they haven't subscribed to my channel yet. So if you really like my content, please give it a like, and do let me know what do you think about this type of content in my channel in my comment section. And if you can share my videos with others, that will be really helpful. But do subscribe and let me know how this video is going. So I can go to my resource group. I can see that, okay, this is the workspace that I'm creating and this is getting created. So it does take some time. You can check the progress for any resource group. So you can click to the bell button. You will see that, okay, the deployment is in progress. So I see the deployment has succeeded. Now you can launch your workspace from here. You pick the account that you have used to log in. Okay, so this is how your new workspace would look like, right? So if you go to catalog, I hope that you are aware of Databricks Workspace. So I'll not take you through the database workspace setup, but let me show you the catalog part, because that's really important. We're gonna see like how do you set up Unity catalog from scratch. So you see that you do not have any Metastore attached currently, right? So you just have a Hive Metastore, and we're not going to use Hive Metastore. So we want to create a Unity catalog Metastore. So what is Unity catalog? So Unity with Unity catalog, you can govern all your assets in your workspaces, right? So basically, you think about assets like tables, view, volume, functions. You can have other things like shares, recipient, catalog, schema. So everything is managed through Unity catalog. For that, you have to create a meta store and you have to attach the your workspace to that particular meta store, right? So I'm not going to talk about like what is Unity catalog. I hope that you are aware of Unity catalog. If you do not know, and if you really need a very detailed video on Unity catalog, just comment in the particular comment section. Let me know like what do you think. If you really need a video, I'll be happy to make that. So for that, like how do you create a meta store? So this is a workspace, right? There is something called as account console, right? So how do you do that? Go there. There is something called as accounts.azuredatabricks.net. So this is the account console for a particular database account, right? So if you just select this one, you have to give an email ID here, and this is not the Gmail ID that you will give. What email ID you want to give? Go back to your workspace. Now go back to Azure and go back to users, right? So go to users and you'll find your user ID here. Once you click that, you'll get user principal name. You have to use this particular principal name to log into that particular account. So let me select this one. Let me go back to Databricks sign in. Let me use that email ID, do a continue, and it did not ask me to because I had already logged in, but it might happen that it asks for you it will ask for your password, that you might have to reset your password. Though just do a reset forgot password and just give that particular email ID and just reset the password, and then come back to that particular URL, right? Azure Databricks, Azure accounts.azure-databricks.com, right? This is how we'll get. So let me go to this workspace. So you'll see all your workspaces created here. I had already created two workspace previously, so this is the workspace that I've currently used, and this is the URL that you will see, right? You'll have something called as catalog, right? I had already created a catalog previously, but to create a Metastore, this is how you create it. First, you have to give a name. You have to select what region that you want that particular Metastore to have, and then you have to provide a ADLS Gen2 path and the access connector, right? How do you do that? Why this is required? Because see, this Metastore is something that exists in Databricks needs a way for this Metastore to connect to your storage accounts to store some data about metadata, right? So it needs a access connector ID, right? Think about like this is Databricks, this is your storage account. Databricks needs something to connect to. This is what you will give the access connector here, right? To connect this two dots, right? So let me go back to my resource, right? We'll create something called as connector ID. So let me go to resource groups, and this is the resource we created. So first let me create the connector ID, right? So search for Databricks. You'll see like access connector for Azure account. So what it does is that it helps the Unity catalog to connect to your storage account, right? Do create. You can select the resource group, give some name like Anirvan decodes access connector, then East US name, this is fine, create it. Now if I go to resource group and let me do the refresh. Now this is the connector that have been added, right? Now I want this connector to have the access to that particular storage account. How do I give that? Let's go to the storage account. I'll go to IAM and we'll do a role assignments, right? So basically add a role assignment. Then search for storage blob contributor. There is something called as storage blob data contributor. What it does, it gives a lot of access to that particular connector, right? So you'll have write, deletes, read, write. So read, get blob container, list of blob containers. So we are basically giving a Databricks to do all these things, right? So let me select this and do next. And because you are giving access to a managed identity, then select the members, select the managed identity. If you see that there is something called access connector for Azure Databricks, and I'll select this is the access connector that we just created, right? And you want decodes access connector. So I'll select this. This is done. I'll go to next. Yep. So the assignment is done. Now what basically we did is we created a connector ID, right? This connector, and we give this connector as a contributor role to do the contribution to this particular storage account, right? Now let's note down few things. Let me go to my code. Okay, so this is the storage account that you just created, right? This is the storage account, right? Now what we're gonna do is we're gonna create few containers, right? So basically whenever you're creating a metastore, you have to give the root location for the metastore to store all your metadata, right? So we can do this as add container. This is metastore root, right? So you create this container, and this will have all the metadata for that unity catalog. We'll create one more container, we'll call this as a data, right? So this is where our project data will reside. So we'll not create multiple storage account. We are creating only one storage account but two different containers. One container for the unity catalog stuff, and one is the data container where we'll store our bronze, silver, or whatever data we need, right? So we'll do this. And maybe one more thing you can do, like you can go to Metastore root and you can create some folder inside this, right? Maybe I'll create something called as root. So basically I'll give this path as well while creating the path, right? So this is what we did. So we created two containers, right? So we have Metastore root and we have a data, right? These are the containers that we created, right? This is fine. One more thing that you have to copy is something like, you go to this access connector ID, you'll have this resource ID. This is what we have to provide to unity catalog. So you just copy this thing, and now you go back to your Azure account, and let me just delete the existing catalog that I have, because this is not needed. So let me just delete this. This is all good. Now let me create the metastore from here. So this is like Anirvan Sen metastore, or maybe I'll just name this as a Anirvan decodes, right? You can select the region. So East US I'm selecting, ADLS Gen 2 path, and this you have to give this in this particular format, right? So if you see, the format is, you have to give the container name, right? What is my container name? My container name is Metastore root. What is my storage name? My storage name is this, right? And .dfs .code.windows.net, and I can give the path, right? So we created something called as root inside it. So I'm just giving this like this, right? Let me go to this Anirvan decodes. This is fine, and this is the access connector ID that we just copied, right? I hope that you're getting this point, right? So I can do a create, and if everything is good, then you'll be able to create this. You see that I was able to create the metastore. Now once you create the metastore, you have to assign two workspaces, right? Basically I previously created some extra workspace, but this was the workspace that I created that exists in Anirvan decodes resource group. So I'll select this and do a assign, and this will just say that I'm enabling the unity catalog. Do enablement. Once this is done, you're all good to go, right? So what you did is you created a metastore and you added your workspace here. Now you see that your Hive metastore went, and you got something called as main catalog, right? This is the main catalog that you are creating. And if you go to details, that okay, this is the user that I've used to create this, right? So let me show you like how do you create a new catalog, right? One thing that you have to remember, that suppose you create or manage, you're not getting the external location, or that means you're not an admin. Okay, one more thing that you do is like you go to the workspace that you just created and go to permissions. You will see that your Gmail ID is exists there. What you do is like you go to add permissions, you just search for your name, right? And you'll get the longer version of the user ID that you had copied earlier, right? This anirvan learning gmail.com at the external ID that you get, right? And you add this as an admin, right? You save it. Now you go to your workspaces, right? This is the workspace, and you go to the URL and you use that particular external ID to log into that account so that you will get a admin access, right? Let me go back here. Now you will be admin here. Suppose now you see that it created the high Metastore is gone and it created a main catalog, right? Now suppose you want to create a new catalog. How do you do that? So let's go to, I want to show you something called as external location and credentials, storage credentials, right? So basically you go to manage, you go to external locations, and you see that there is one location that got added, right? So this is the location that you added, that okay, this is where I'll be storing all the metadata for my Metastore, right? So that's a Metastore root and everything inside this, right? Now there is something called as credentials. So credentials means that okay, this is a purpose is storage. So this is the connector ID, and that can be used to create anything on that particular storage, right? Now you might say that okay, I want to create some catalog not inside this, right? So if I go to external location, I do not want to store anything inside the root, right? I want to create a new catalog container. I want to store all my data there, right? Now how to do that? So you go back to storage account, right? Let me go back to the resources. So basically what I'm saying is I'll go to the storage account, I'll go to container, because this is my Metastore root, right? I do not want to create any catalogs inside this. I want to create a catalog outside of this, right? And this is my data container where I'll be storing all my data. So what I do is like I'll create one more container. You can name this as like catalog maybe yeah, catalog location, catalog location. You create this. So what we're going to do is like we're going to create everything inside this, all the catalogs inside this, right? Now there is one thing that you have to do. Let's go back to our workspaces, and I have only one Metastore root location, right? But I want to create a different external location. So you do like create external location. You can name this as a like catalog external location. This is a Azure, storage type is Azure, right? And you define the URL. How the URL will be looking like? This is like, if you see, this is ABFS. So ABFS, right? And what's the container name? My container name is now different, right? Log location. What is my storage account name? This is my storage, right? And then it is simple. You have to give like DFS. So I have to do like DFS dot code dot windows dot name, right? So this is how this will look like. And you can give some path. If path is not required, you can also just give like this. So let me go back to this URL. As storage credential, you can use the manage identity that we have created, because we have given the connector ID as the storage contributor role for the whole storage account, right? So you can use the same storage credentials, right? So you can give this, this path will be used to create catalogs, right? Then you do a create, and to check that everything is fine, you can just do like test location, and if everything is green, you're good to go, right? Now I've created a external location. Let's create a catalog now. Now I'll go to create, no, not this, I'll go to create, yeah, I create a catalog. I can name this as Anirvan Decodes, right? This is a standard catalog, and what location, this is the external location, and I can give this as a path also, right? Now you see the how the location will look like. This will go under catalog location, and I'm just creating a path inside this, right? Uneven decodes. Let me create this, right? You can configure what you need. So basically I'm granting all the permission for all the account users to browse it, right? And you can just add some tags and everything is required. So you see that we have freshly created a catalog, and this will be added as a default catalog. Now from this catalog we can create different schemas, because that's what we're gonna need. We're gonna need branch, and see, you can also define a different schema location. So you basically can create one more external location. Suppose you do not want all this data a schema location different from a catalog location, so you can also do that. So it's very interesting. You can, so it's Unity Catalog is very flexible to define where you want to store all your data. So you want your Metastore to be placed in another storage account, you can do that. You can define all your catalog somewhere, you can define storage schema somewhere, and you can also add your table somewhere else, right? So this is very flexible, but we'll use the same location. Whatever is the catalog, store my schema there itself. So you see that I'm creating a branch here, and let me create one more schema that is called silver. I'll create one more that is gold, right? So this is how we'll be creating this, right? Now the Unity catalog setup is completed. Like, I know that this was a lot of step, but this is very important for you to understand that how do you set up this, because in interview questions also you'll be asked like, can you create a different external location, and can you use this to create a different catalog, different schema? How do you create a external location? How do you create a storage credentials and all that? So if you have a hands-on, it's very easy to understand that, right? Let me show you one more interesting thing, right? Let me go back to the resource group, right? And let me go back, maybe let's go to resource group section. You will see that there is something called as manage resource group got created, right? And if you remember, I talked about that whenever you're creating any workspaces, it creates a manage resource group. So you basically gave the manage resource group name here, right? So if you go there, it will create a lot of different resources that Databricks needs. Something called as, if you do not want to, if you want to use the default storage, you can, so whatever you create. So basically we created a different catalog when we gave some other location, right? And if you don't want to do all that, you can just use the default location, but usually people don't do that. They do not use this default location, right? And it will use the workers security group worker virtual net. This is the virtual net I'm talking about, right? So basically whenever you are spinning up any Databricks cluster and you are using the virtual net, so but this virtual net is something that is managed by this particular managed resource group, but usually in enterprises they use something called as vnet injected setup, that they want to use their own virtual net. They don't want to use the managed virtual net by Databricks, right? So this is just a background that I want to give, that database do create a lot of resources that it needs to work on this, right? So to test everything up, what we're going to do is, let me go back to the workspace. To test the state up, what you're going to do, we're going to upload some files to our storage location, and we'll see like if we're able to read that properly, right? Let me go to the storage account. So this is a storage account. We have created something called as data. Basically what going to do is like we're going to create something called as landing, right? So this is where we'll be landing all our data, and from there our medallion architecture will start. We'll have bronze, silver, gold, and everything else. Let, let me store some data here. So I'll upload some data. So you can upload any CSV file, but I have all the code on all the data file that I'll be talking about the GitHub setup in our upcoming section. But you can you can just upload any text file or any CSV file just to test if everything is fine, right? So let me just upload this diagnosis raw.csv. That this is, I think this is uploaded. I'll just copy this URL, right? Let me go to the workspace. Let me create a notebook, and we are going to just use our serverless to run this. And let me just use AI assistant to get me the code, right? So I'll say that, okay, I want to read the CSV file from an APFS location and write to Anirvan decodes dot bronze schema, right? So this is how I'm giving that. So let's see like if AI is able to give you the answer. So see that it got the answer. So basically this is how you'll be reading that, right? Diagnosis raw.csv, and this is where you are storing the data in Anirvan decode bronze diagnosis raw. Let me run this. Now you see that read has failed, right? I want to just show you like for you to understand that why it has failed, right? Basically you see that I'm trying to read the data from something called as data, right? This is the container. Why this has failed? Because we do not have a external location called as data. We have something called as Metastore root, and we also have a something called as catalog location. So how do you debug that? Go to your catalog, then go to external locations. You see that we had created something called as catalog location Metastore root, but we do not have anything for a data. How do you do that? It's very simple. Go to create Letterstone and just mention like data location, and what's the URL. We had copied previously, so you can just mention that, okay, this is the data, right? This is the URL. So let me go to this. So this is data at the rate storage account. You want to give the storage for anything that comes after that, you want to give the access storage credential. You can use the manage identity. So this will be used to read to access data location. Do a create, test it, testing it fine. Go back to your notebook now. Now let's just run this again. Now you see that it is able to read it. Sometime it might take some time for that to be getting reflected. If that it's not happening, you just go to and do a new session, or you can terminate the session and do just a refresh, and you should be able to read the data, right? So you see that I'm able to read it, and this is how my data is looking like. So I know this has a lot of setup in place, but this is really important for you to understand the setup. And doing it hands-on really adds a lot of value. You'll not understand when you do it by yourself. You will see that a lot of things fails, and if something fails, just go there, just go in Google and just try to debug how that happened. That's how I learn, and I'll also recommend you to learn in that way, right? So with this, the setup part is done. So all the hard stuff is done. We understood the problem statement, we understood the setup part. Now the fun part starts, right? Now we'll start writing our ETL logic, right? So with that, let's go to the next section. Hey everyone, so we are starting the section where we'll actually code our project. We'll actually build the ETL pipeline for it, and I know that a lot of you folks are really excited for this particular section. So but before that, if you're liking the video so far, just give it a like and let me know what you like in this particular section. And with that, let's get started. So I have kept all the code in this particular repo. I'll be sharing the repo link in the video description, so you don't have to worry about. So few things that you can do: you can either fork it in your own GitHub account if you want to make some changes, and if you want to suggest some few changes, you can fork it and create a pull request. I'll be very happy to review it. And then once you're done, or if you don't want to do that, that's absolutely fine. This is a public repo, so you'll be able to clone it directly. So just do a code, go to https, just copy this particular URL, then go back to your workspace. And I'm inside workspace, so basically go to your users, go to your this is the user that I've already created a Git folder, but you can create something called as Git folder in Databricks to work with Git repos directly, right? So you can do create, you can go to Git folder, just paste your URL here. It will create, it will understand that this is a GitHub one, and it will also give you the folder name. You can also change the folder name if you want. I'll just name it as project one, then create the folder. I'll just go back to my original folder, but yeah, you don't have to use this, right? So this is how the project will look like. All your raw data that we'll be working on will be inside a folder called as raw data, and it will have like 4 feeds like diagnosis, hospital, patient, visit, raw.csv, right? What is this? If you go back to our architecture, this section, right, basically this Azure FHI service, what it does, it extract the data from your EHR system, and it can store the data to your bucket. What we're gonna do is we're gonna create something called as staging folder, and we'll be keeping all this straw data into that, because I won't be able to showcase you this part, right? Basically I'll be showcasing you from here to everything here on the Databricks part, right? So for that, we are assuming that we already have a Azure FHI service which extracted the data and stored the raw feed as a CSV file in our bucket. Just to do that, let me go back to a storage account. Let me show how the setup is done for the staging. This is the storage account, right? And what I did was I created a in data under, we already had this data container, right? In that, what we did was we created a folder called as staging. In that, we created 4 more folders. One is diagnosis, hospital, patient, visit, and inside each we have kept the CSV file. So you basically can follow the same structure. What you do is, like in your data container, you create one folder called as staging. Under that, you create all this folder and keep one CSV file inside each folder, right? Like in hospital, this is the folder. Similar for patient.csv. So basically you download all these files. Maybe you can clone in your own, maybe use a Visual Studio to clone it, and then copy the files and keep it in that folder, right? Once that is done, we can get started with the coding the stuff. So let me go back to the folder, and this is the file. This is the resources, not resources, sorry, raw data, diagnosis raw.csv. If I show you this, right, what happens in whenever some system extracts some data and store it, right? So let's just think that, okay, for today, for suppose today is 2025 January, today is 24th, right? This is how you got the data first, right? So we have extracted something like extracted five different diagnoses and diagnosis description. For the next day, suppose 2025 125, you might get the same type of record, or I might get something like this, right? So maybe it might happen the system has changed the description for that particular code, right? It made as like hypertension, maybe light. I'm not sure, so I'm not from a medical background, so I'm not sure, but just I'm just writing this hypertension light, right? And you might get some other diagnosis also, right? So if it is like diagnosis 6, diabetes type 1. So what I mean to say is, whenever you get this type of file, you usually can get some updated version for that particular diagnosis, or you can also get some new diagnosis. So what we are going to do is, for a bronze layer, we'll read all these files and we'll just append into a bronze layer, and we'll take care of this update part, basically why this is getting updated, right? We'll get take care of this in a silver layer. When I showcase you the code, you'll get a better understanding like what I'm trying to explain you, right? So for now, just understand that whenever you get this batch, and this applies to every other file, right? Every other project that you will work on, you might get this type of data, right? So let me just go this, and this applies to all the files. So if I show you the hospital raw, so you see that you get this type of file. It might happen that the bed count might change, and it might happen that the hospital change, adding new hospitals, right? You have to take care of all those things. So you can check other two files also, but that the structure of that remains the same, right? So I hope that understood this data structure and how this looks like, and this is how exactly you get in your, whenever you are working on any project, this is how you get the data. You have to understand how the data look like. Can there be a update on the existing record? How do you manage it? There are other concepts like SAD type 1, type 2, type 3, right? You have to think about on of all those cases, right? So now we understood the file. Let me go back to, so we'll start coding up from a bronze layer. So you can go back to your bronze, and you will see that I have like 4 different raw ingestion files, right? So I'll be showcasing you one by one. Let me go to the diagnosis raw data ingestion first. What we are doing in the bronze layer, right? So first we're creating a schema, nirvan decodes.bronze. If this exists, that's fine. We have already, I think we have already created this schema. We have created like 3 schema: bronze, silver, gold, but this is just to make sure that you have the schema ready. And for you, if you have given some other name, just change the schema catalog name or the schema name here, and you're good to go. Then what we're going to do is, like, first we're going to make sure that we have the source file ready, right? So this is the AVFS location, and this is the container that you have. This is a storage account, and you have all the diagnosis inside a folder called as staging, then diagnosis. Just to make sure that this is correct, you go back, you see that you have staging, you have diagnosis, and then you have so inside this you'll have a more folder. So currently it is named a diagnosis raw, but usually what happens is, whenever some services insert the data, this prepend something called a post, there will be some post pick call as diagnosis raw underscore today's date, right? That's how usually you get the data, but just for simplicity I'm naming this as a raw.csv. So this is the source path that you have to give. Then you have to give a checkpoint location. Basically, we're going to use autoloader. So autoloader is helpful for you to load any files from your cloud system, and it takes care of all the nitty-gritty of any loading ETL. Something called as it takes care of checkpointing, it takes care of schema evaluation on all that, right? I'll explain you that how that works. So we are giving a checkpoint location as this is under the data, but it is under the branch, and I'm naming this as diagnosis raw checkpoint because this is the diagnosis, so I'm giving the checkpoint location. Similarly, you have to give a schema location. In autoloader, you provide a schema location because next time when the autoloader function runs, it can refer this particular schema for is inferring the schema for the data. It can use this for schema evaluation, all the good stuff that autoloader provides, right? Then I'm just reading from cloud file. So this is how you read a stream, because this will be, so you can run this autoloader in a schedule and you can make sure that all the files that came, you can read one by one, or you can read multiple files at the same time, right? And the cloud file format is CSV header, because you do have the header in that file. I'm making this header as true. Then inferring, I'm inferring the schema, and I'm making sure that at one time I'm just reading one file, right? So depending upon how the data looks like, you can change this parameter, but for simplicity I am adding one file per trigger. Then the schema location that I've just provided. Then it just, whenever you are using any autoloader files, you get some column called as rescue data. So whatever it was not able to read it uses this particular column to store some metadata for that, right? For simplicity, just to not showcase it to not to persist this into a table, I'm just dropping this rescue data, but you can keep it, not an issue. Then you are writing the stream as a delta. You provide the checkpoint location, right? And output mode is append. And this is very important. Trigger now available now equal to true. How this works is, and okay, let me just explain you how this particular trigger works. So what we are doing is, you have all the data in a particular folder, right? It might happen that autoloader, when it run, there was only five files here, right? So okay, diagnosis raw, suppose 1 2 3 4 5. Now I have run this diagnosis, I have run this ETL pipeline once. It was able to read everything, right? So available now means whatever exists currently, you just read everything. And how the checkpoint works, so let me explain you this way, right? So suppose I have some files called at diagnosis 1, then you have diagnosis 2, diagnosis 3. So how the autoloader will work, whenever you have something called as available now, it will read all these files together and it will do a checkpoint. Checkpointing means that, okay, I have read all those files, so next time when it runs, I shouldn't read these files again, because that will be duplicated. So that's how the checkpointing works. Checkpointing means once you read everything, you just place a checkpoint here, right? Just for your thinking purpose. And so that means I don't have to read it. If there are new files called as suppose diagnosis 4, diagnosis 5, then I'll read this. So available now means whatever exists here, you read it, do a checkpoint. Next time, whatever else rather than the checkpointed files, you read everything. I hope that makes sense. What you do is create different files, push it to ADLS and run this particular folder. You will see that the first time when it already read all those files, it will not store any more data. That means that you have already checkpointed. That means you have already read that file. So do some experimentation, it will make more sense. So once you have that, this is all you need, right? So basically I'm saying that all this data should be append mode and it should be created as a table. That table should be inside the branch layer. I'm naming this a diagnosis row. So this is all it needs. Once you run this, it will run a stream. It basically say that what's the input versus processing rate. You can also see the raw data it stored, right? Raw data it uses, and batch duration and all the good stuff. And you can once the data is persisted, you can just read the data with diagnosis raw, right? So this is my diagnosis. So next time if I run, if I get new records, I'll append into the table. We'll take care of updating the rows in the silver layer. For the bronze layer, just think that we are appending everything. This is the same stuff done for all the other things. Like if you see, the hospitals also works the same way. It just read from hospitals, use the autoloader to write it, and this is how the hospital row will look like. Same for patients. You have patient things, same thing, same cloud files, and this is how the you get the patient. And similarly, you will have all the visit data. So visit data also works the same way, and you will just append it. So I think that makes sense regarding the bronze layer. So just keep in mind, bronze layer just append of all the files that you get in your staging area. Now the interesting part, let me go to silver layer now. So this is the silver layer code. I've kept all the code so that it's easier for you to go to that particular section, run the code, understand what's happening. Because until and unless you run the code, you face some issue, you'll not understand what's happening. Now let me go to the DEAM diagnosis ingestion. I'm naming this as DEAM because this is a dimension table. Similar for fact, this is a fact table, right? So let's go to diagnosis. Now this is the interesting part. Now this is just like I'm just creating a schema called as silver, and I'm just read this one. Now this is where we'll do all our merging part, right? Merging loading means if some diagnosis code has updated or if some new diagnosis came and I need to update it. First, because we do have the bronze table, so this is the raw data, and we have the silver table, that this is the silver table that we want to create. And similarly, we'll create checkpoint path, right? This is the checkpoint path, and this is for the silver layer path, because for silver layer also we have to do some checkpointing. Now I'll be using spark.readstream.table. So this is to read incremental data. I'm going to do some cleaning because silver layer, if you understand the medallion architecture, you have to do some, if you have to do something like dropping some duplicates or renaming some column, all those things you do on the silver layer. So all this like dropping duplicates, or if you want to add some new columns, so what I'm doing is I'm dropping the duplicate. So if there are some duplicates on the diagnosis code, which is like kind of primary key, so you can drop all those records. We are creating a function called as merge team diagnosis. So what it does is I'm just checking for the first time if there any table exists called as silver table. If this silver table does not exist, so I'm just checking, negating it. If the table does not exist, then you can override this table, right? So at the first time, we don't have anything to do the merge operation. So for the first time, you write this, override this table and do a return, right? Then the next time, if this is false, right? So then you come here. What I'm checking is this is how you do a merge operation with delta. You just mention, okay, this is the delta table. You just pass the spark, you pass the table name, and this will become a delta object for you. Then you can do a merge operation called as DEAM diagnosis. I am making this as a alias T. Do a merge operation. Merge operation will happen on diagnosis code, and if you remember that this is the primary key, if there are records that is coming with the same primary key, then you are just doing the update. If not, we can insert this. So that's how the updates are happening, like basically the merge operation. So this is the merge condition, and if there are match, then you just update it. So you can update the diagnosis description. If there are no match, you can insert the record, right? So this is the code that you can write. Then the last part is whatever the data frame that you have, you write it. You use for each batch. That means for every batch that you are reading it, you can run this particular function. So I hope that you are aware of it, but I'm just telling you in much more detail like how you should think about merge operation. And I'm doing an output mode as update. trigger now is available now, and you can just pass the checkpoint location. So this is like the very usual stuff, like how you do a merge operation in Delta, just to make sure that if any data comes, new record comes, you just insert it on the silver layer. If there is nothing, if the same record comes, you can update this diagnosis description, right? So this is how you do the merge operation, and you can just read the data to make sure that you have all the data. And this is the load timestamp to just to make sure that, okay, if I want to debug like when this particular data got updated or inserted, I can check this, and I can check my ETL job to make sure that everything is fine, right? Similar thing we have to do for other layers, that is hospital, right? In hospital, the update will happen on hospital ID. Same for patient, this update will happen in patient ID. So I'm not going through all the code here because that will just waste your time. So what I'll recommend is just go, because this is very simple. Just for the example for patient, what I am doing is I'm dropping the duplicates on patient ID, and I'm just adding new columns, right? Load timestamp and patient first name or mask, if you want to mask it, because that is also a function of silver layer in middle lane architecture. If you want to mask some columns, you can do that, but everything else remains the same. The idea is just to read it and do a merge operation, right? And we are doing this with Spark read stream, because why we're using this spark.read stream, if I show you here spark.read stream, that means it can use checkpoint location. If you see that we are giving the checkpoint location, right? So from the bronze level also, like how it from bronze level also, how it worked for the autoloader, the same thing happened in the table also. So in tables, you are inserting all those records as a append mode. So if I run my silver layer first, it will read everything and it will do a checkpoint, and next time it will see that are there any new records inserted. If there are any new records inserted, it will just read only those records. So this is very important, that to use spark.read stream, not spark.read. Spark.read means you are reading all everything that available in that particular table, but that is not the intended behavior that we want, correct? Same thing for fact visit ingestion. So this is a little different. This is where we'll be reading directly from the tables, because we are reading from the bronze table that we already have it. And what we are doing is we are reading all the tables here, like patient data, hospital data, diagnosis data. Then we are reading the bronze table, then we are just joining this to just get a white table, right? So this is to join this visit bronze that we have, joining with patient, hospital, diagnosis, and get a white table, because while reporting something, you don't want to do a lot of joining between a dimension and fact data and get your result, right? So basically this step is to get a white table with all the columns in place so that reportings are easy. So this is to just do that particular stuff, but everything else remain the same. Only if there are any matches on visit, you update it. If there no matches, you insert it, right? And everything else remain the same. If I show you the raw data for fact visit, this is how it will look like. You will have all the columns. If you see that from all the columns like patient, hospital, diagnosis, you have everything in place, and we'll do our analysis on top of this particular table, right? So this is all for that particular silver layer. Now let's jump to the gold layer, where we'll do all our analysis code. So you go to gold, you'll see only one folder, one particular notebook that is called resubmission analysis, and this is our business process that we want to solve. So this step is just to show the raw data so that you know like what you are working on, and we'll be using some Windows function. So I've just imported that code. Now this is where the code starts, right? So first you are reading, and you see that I'm not reading spark.read stream, because what we are going to do is we're going to do aggregates on top of the whole table that you get in the silver layer, right? So we don't have to do this like spark.read stream. We'll be just reading everything and doing some aggregation and finding the reporting for that, right? So that's why spark.read.table, you just read the silver fact that we have. Now the logic starts for this particular logic. So first I'm creating a window. I'm making sure that I'm partitioning this in patient ID, and I'm ordering it by admission date, right? So basically what we are doing is we partitioning on the patient ID. So you see for each patient you will have multiple records, right? So because that's what we are trying to calculate. We are trying to calculate if the patient has visited more than once and if they have visited in less than 30 days for the same diagnosis, right? So you see that patient ID is there and you have something called a discharge date. That means, see, patient 01 has visited twice, right? On 2021 5 and 2025 22, and that is even less than 30 days. So in less than 30 days they have visited the hospital again. So that's what we are trying to do. Like, so we are trying to do partition by that patient ID and order by admission date. Once that is done, we're trying to calculate like what's the previous discharge date, right? So for this, if you see for this particular person, for this one, when he has visited again, the previous discharge date was 2025-05. This is what we are going try to calculate, and you can do that with the lag function over the window. So that's basically what you are trying to do. Then I'm just creating one more column, that days since last visit. This you can get it difference between the admission date and the previous date. Basically this is one of the metric that you are trying to calculate, days last visit. Once this is done, I am creating one more column. I'm calling this its read submission less than 30 days. That means if the days since last video is less than 30, then you can mark this column as 1, otherwise 0. So this is one of the column that you can use in your reporting, right? So with this you can just you can run this particular record, right? So if you see that I'm displaying this particular data frame, and this is how you'll get the data. So if you scroll on the right side, you will see that for this particular person who has visited twice, previous discharge date was 2025-05 and days his last visit is 15 days. That means he was admitted in less than 30 days. That's why this column is 1. But for this row, this is 0 because this was the first time he has visited that hospital. Similarly, for this one also, this is 45 like days last visit. That's why we're marking this column as 0. So this is a very smarter way to calculate this particular report with Windows function. I hope that this makes sense for you. Now we are just creating a few more columns that we are just trying to do some aggregate. So aggregate on top of hospital ID, hospital name, basically whatever you see here, right? This is a hospital name and the hospital ID and the diagnosis description, and we're calculating some aggregates like what's the total number of visits for that particular person, and what is the total resubmission, right? So basically we're just calculating, we are just adding this 1 and zeros to make sure that how many resubmissions happen and what's the rate of that submission, right? So basically the sum of the submission divided by the number of the total number, right? So basically that's the resubmission date and we're just rounding it. Then what's the cost, how much was costed for that particular diagnosis, and what's the average cost. Then we can also add some new column like gold load, timestamp, current timestamp. So that's all it needed for this particular data frame to work. Then if you just see the display of that, that means if you see hospital ID, hospital name, chest pain, total number of visits is 2, but in that total two patient have two patient have visited, but there was only one admission happened. That's why the resubmission is 0.5, right? That 50% of patient is getting resubmitted, and this is the total cost and average cost. Similarly, for this particular hospital, for this particular description, number total visit is this, but they haven't visited this again. That's why this resubmission rate is 0. So you see that how important this columns are, right? So you can really understand that this will be very valuable for any hospital chains to understand, okay, for what are the hospitals and what are the diagnoses uh, that is causing a lot of resubmissions, right? Then what I'm doing is I'm just overwriting it. So every time whenever you're calculating it, you can overwrite the whole table. I'm naming this as hospital diagnosis KPI. Now on top of it, you can ask a lot of question now, like few things, that which hospital has the highest resubmission rate. That means I'm selecting everything, I'm just seeing the resubmission rate, and you see that Manipal hospital, that is part of that hospital chain, has a highest resubmission rate, right? So this is like 0.5, like 50% of patients are getting resubmission with the same diagnosis. So this is a very bad thing, like 50% if patients are getting resubmitted, that's a very bad thing for the hospital, right? But these hospitals are going good, right? So on top of that, you can also calculate like which disease category causes maximum resubmissions. So you can group by your diagnosis description. I am ordering the so basically I'm calculating the total resubmissions. So you see that kidney infection is like having the most like one of the factor for resubmissions, right, readmissions, and similar for chest pain, but this diagnosis are fine. So being a hospital chain, once you have this data in place, you can go to your hospital, you can say, you can do a lot of analysis now, right? Like what's exactly happened now, you know that what are the diseases, what are the hospital causing all these things. Now you can go to your hospital, you can talk to the doctors, you can talk to your management, like why is exactly this happening, then you can take some action on top of it, right? So you see that we had a problem in mind, then we created a data modeling, then, and this is where you have bridge now, right? Now we have the data in place, you can see that in your as a SQL command, that you have all the reports in place, right? So this is all you can do now. We are just running this as part of, like we are going to each notebook and we are running this one by one, but that's not how you're going to run in production. You're going to need some workflows to keep it running. That's why we'll be using the jobs and jobs in in database it is called as lake flow jobs. So you can schedule all those tasks as a job. So let me show you how to do that. So let's go back to jobs and pipeline, and you can do a lake flow create, and you can create a job. So this is used for orchestrating notebooks, pipeline, queries, and many more. Let me click this. I'll give this as name that this is a end to end project job. Now I can add some task here. So first I'll have, so you'll have a medallion architecture, right? Bronze, silver, gold. So first I'll add all the bronze files. So right, so this is like, you can name this as a diagnosis raw ingestion task, and you can so the type is notebook because we are creating everything as a notebook, and the what the source is workspace. You can also give a git provider, but I'm going for a workspace as a source. Then you can select the path here. So you go to your this one, and this is the user, and this is the project that you have. You go to bronze, you will see that I have this diagnosis raw data ingestion, and this is for diagnosis raw task, right? So this is done. Now I'll create this task. Similarly, I can create one more task called as patients ingestion task, and I can select the notebook. This is done. I'm using serverless as a compute, but you can always create a new job cluster, or you can also use all-purpose cluster. But I really love how serverless works in Databricks, so you can go ahead with the same option, right? But you see that now what's happening? This added something called as depends on. That means that patient ingestion task will run only when the diagnosis raw ingestion task happen, but that is not our case, right? So all this ingestion from a staging to branch can happen independently. This is not depending upon any of the different tasks. So what we can do is, like, you can just remove this as a depend on. Now you see that you do not have any edges between these two, right? So that's how you create the dependency between tasks in workflows. So you can create this task. Now let's see, let me create a silver task now. I'll go to as a notebook, I'll create this, and this is like diagnosis silver task. I can select the notebook now. I'll go to silver, I'll select the diagnosis ingestion, right? So now you can, from here you can select what it depends on. So it is properly identified the dependencies. So basically, no, you haven't identified. So basically what you do is, like, you remove this, and this depends upon, this silver task depends upon the raw ingestion for the bronze layer. So you can select the bronze. So you see that I am adding the diagnosis. So that means that once the bronze ingestion happens, you run the silver one. So you see that how easy it is to orchestrate any job in Databricks. That's why Lakeflow Connect, and we call it Lakeflow Connect in Databricks, and it's very easy to schedule any job, to do any transformation. And you see that from that UI you're able to do everything, right? To save time, I've already created all these jobs. So let me go back to jobs pipeline. You see that I've created this job as end-to-end healthcare project job. Let me show you the task here. So you see that I have all the branch task first, but how I was showing you, diagnosis, hospital, patient, right? Similarly, you have all the silver layers. So diagnosis runs after raw, similar for hospital, similar for patient, right? Then you have this is the visit raw ingestion task. Now you have all the silver task here. You also have a task called as fact visit ingestion. But if you remember, the fact ingestion depends upon all this branch layer to be present there, right? So because we are joining all this table to get a wider table, so that's why we have added this as a dependency, that all this downstream should happen first, then it can run it. How you do that? You go to this particular task and you add all the tasks that it is dependent upon. So that's how you create this dependency in place. Once this is done, you can run this. So basically this is your gold layer. So you can define what it depends on, right? So once this is all done, like, it is very easy to create this. I really appreciate that you do it by yourself. We'll also once this is done, you can just do a run now and it will start the job. So let me show you one of the run that I've already created, and this is the run that happened. You see that how beautiful it is, right? So you have all the bronze layer here, and this is the silver layer that you have. So you're doing all those aggregation and all that stuff, and this is the gold layer that you have, that is a resubmission analysis. And this is from this table you will be doing all your analysis now. So I hope that this makes sense for you, and this is really cool in Databricks to create a orchestrator like this, to just using the UI, and it is really good. Now you see that we are doing all these things by manually doing from the UI, but that's not how it works in production, right? You'll not create all this stuff individually. And suppose this is your development environment and you want to create the job in some other environments like in UAT or SIT or production, you'll not use this UI here, right? So this is this is our next section where I'll be showcasing you like how to create these jobs through CI/CD pipeline, through DApp templates, and we'll also see how to use GitHub Actions to do this CI/CD pipeline in place. I think that's the most interesting part here, and you'll come to know like how DevOps work behind the scenes, how you can use DevOps to make these jobs as a production ready pipeline. So let's go to the next section now. So now you're able to create the workflow. Now you have to take this to production, or maybe you want to create this automatically through some CI/CD pipeline. So this is where you'll be using the Databricks asset bundles, and I'll be showing you like how to create a bundle and how to deploy this to your workspaces using GitHub Actions. So we'll see the integration between the GitHub Actions and also the Databricks asset bundles. So this will be a complete picture of how to do CI/CD on Databricks using this two technology. But before that, I'd like to just show you something. So if you go back to your repo, so this is the repo that I've been working on. So if you had already forked it and created a Git folder, and suppose you're doing any changes on that Git folder, right? So let me go back to this. So this is the Git folder. Suppose I'm doing any changes, right? So suppose I'm adding maybe new text, like this is the change, right? So now, and I want to store these changes in my GitHub repo. So if you just click on this, so this is the main branch that you've been working on, right? So you'll see that it shows that okay, this particular change have been done to that particular file, and you want to merge it. But how does Databricks will have the access to merge the code into a GitHub repo? This is where you have to integrate the Git integration. So let me show you how you do that. Go to settings, and you have something called as linked accounts. So once you do, you will see that there you get an option like adding a credential. So you just basically do this add git credentials, and here you mention that this is a source as GitHub, then you mention link git account. So I already had a git, I already linked a git account, so it's not showing me that particular option, but you can always do that. It will take you to your GitHub account. It will ask you to install some app. So basically you just have to do next. It will authorize, and you'll get a link account like this, right? So this is the link account. So basically this is the provider email, and this is the username, and it also have a token, right? This token will be created automatically by Databricks. So this is all you need to do any reflect any changes from your Databricks workspace to your GitHub account. So why this is important is because once I'm showing you all these changes, you might be doing a lot of changes in your workspaces. Then you have to commit all these changes into GitHub. So to do that, just go to a main, that this is the change I did, suppose. Then I'll mention okay, this is my test change. Then okay, so it has some changes, so I have to pull it first because I was doing some background changes. So I'll pull the changes first, and once this is done, you can push your changes right directly from Databricks. So you don't have to leave Databricks, you don't have to do that in local system. So if I go back, you will see that if I refresh this, you see this is my test change. These changes have been reflected. So this is how you'll do the changes. This is very important because in the GitHub repo, you have to get all your latest changes, whatever changes you did, because that is the code you're going to deploy to Databricks Workspace. So that's very important. So now what you do is like you clone this particular project in your local workspace, like in your local computer, and you use some ID to open that particular folder because we'll be doing some changes regarding database asset bundle. So I have already cloned it, and I have opened that particular folder here. And if you see that I have few changes that I did, right? One regarding GitHub action, I'll be talking about this later. But for this, it's very, there are a few things that I've added. Something called as Databricks YAML and something around the resources YAML, right? Why this is required? Let me go back to workflow. So this is what I do whenever I create some resources with Databricks asset bundles, right? So if you just click on here, you will see that there is something coming as edit.yaml. So this is basically your YAML that is required for Databricks asset bundle. So basically what it says is it will have some resources, right? And first, let me just copy this. Let me just copy it. Let me keep this here, and you will see that it is like a YAML representation of a job, right? So it has some resources called as jobs. So you have only one job currently that is mentioned as end-to-end healthcare project job, and you have a lot of tasks around it, right? This is the name of the job. There are different tasks here. If you see, there are different tasks, right? So whatever you see it here, you just copy it here first, right? So this is just the representation of that job. Basically, you don't have to know a lot of things here to make it work, because this is what I follow. I create this from the UI itself, and then I just copy this YAML, I paste it, and I do the necessary changes required for database asset bundles to work, right? So some of the changes that is required, let me now. So for asset bundles, what you have to do is like you create a folder called as resources, and you just create a YAML file here. So basically whatever you see here, it is here itself. But there are some changes that we did basically on notebook path, right? So if you see on the reference, you'll have the path as this, right? Like total whatever path that you see, like it's the full path, absolute path you can say that you see. But in database asset bundles you can't give that path, because that will be variable, right? Depending upon the environment or depending upon who is deploying it, those path will be different. So what we do is like we just provide a path like dot dot slash, that means go up, then use this bronze, right? And then use this particular IPNB file. So this is like a relative path you are giving here. So that is the only change that I had to do to make it work with Databricks asset bundles, right? So I gave similarly for other paths. So that is the only change. I don't have any other changes here, right? So once you did that, so this is all it requires for Databricks asset bundles to work. Basically create a YAML file which has the configuration. This is like if you think about Terraform, so Database asset bundle uses Terraform behind the scenes. So Database asset bundle is like app, you can say abstract on top of Terraform, right? So basically we have to define like how much jobs should be created, how many tasks will be there. So that is pretty simple. For Databricks asset bundle, there is one more thing that you need to do. You need to create something called a database.yaml file. This is pretty simple. You have to provide a bundle name. So bundle means bundle is just like as the name suggests, is just bundling all the resources. So you basically have given one name for the bundle, right? Then you have to include where my resources files are. So if you see that I have created all the resources under resources, so I'm just mentioning that include here. Then you define targets. So target means in which workspace you want to create these resources. So I'm having like two targets for me. One is dev and another is prod. For dev, the mode is development. Mode development means you will see like once I deploy this, your username will be prefixed with the job name, right? So that's basically the development, because you want to identify in development mode who has created that particular job, right? And you define what's the workspace host, right? So this is the host that I have copied, right? So basically the workspace that you have, and if you see that this is the workspace host name, right? So I've just copied that particular host name here. And similarly for prod, for our demo we just have like two we just have like one workspace, so I'm just showing it that you can just you can have multiple workspace here, but just for the demo I've just used the same workspace in here, and I've just made the mode as production. So you'll see that in production my username will not be appended, right? And you just define what's the root path. I'll be showcasing you that, like where exactly it is coming up, right? So this is like whatever files that you are getting, you are deploying through this bundle, it will be stored here. So that's the root path. I'll be showcasing you that, don't worry. So there is two things required. One is creating the resources. It's very easy. Copy the YAML file, do the necessary changes, and you're good to go. And if you want to learn more, maybe you can go to Databricks documentation regarding asset bundles. You can learn more, like how to define different resources and all that. And the Databricks YAML, this is like a where exactly it should deploy it, right? Now let's see like how do you deploy this now. So to do that, first you have to install Databricks CLI. So Databricks CLI download, just search for this, you will get this option. So either if you are in Linux, you can use these functions, or if you are in Windows, you can use these functions to install the Database CLI. So it's a CLI tool for you. Once it is installed, and I have opened a terminal, so you can search for Databricks version, then you should be getting the CLI version for it. So always use the latest CLI because it has a lot of good functionality for it, right? Once this is done, you have to configure the Databricks CLI, because you have to authenticate your Databricks CLI to do some changes in your workspace. We do it like Databricks configure token, right? So this is the command that you need to configure this particular Databricks CLI. So it will first ask you about the Databricks Workspace host. So I'll go to this host. So this is the host that I want to deploy mine. Then you need a personal access token. So let me go back to Workspace, and you go to settings, and you go to developer, and you see there is an option called as access tokens. So create a token. So this is the personal token for demo. I'll make this as like just 1 day, because this I don't want to leak it. So generate it and make sure that you copy this one, because you won't be able to see that later, right? Once this is done, you just paste it here, and this is all you need to configure your CLI first. Now there are like few commands that you can use to deploy your project, but before that we'll just validate if everything is fine with Databricks bundle. So there is command like Databricks bundle validate, and you mention the target, for which target you want to validate. So I want to validate it for dev. So basically you just do like Databricks bundle validate tdev, and it will say that okay, this workspace, this is the host, this is the user, and this is the path for that bundle, and everything is validation is okay. Now the next step is Databricks bundle validate, Databricks bundle deploy. So this will actually deploy the bundle. You'll see that first it will upload all your bundle files, and it will update the deployment state, then the deployment is completed, right? Let me deploy it for prod also, so that I can show you the differences. So I'll deploy it for prod. Now see, there is first difference is, you see, for dev I'm deploying the resources file under my user, right? That's the first difference. But for production I'm deploying this under bundle, right? So that makes sense, right? For production you will not want to use some user workspace path in that particular location, right? You want it to push to a centralized location where anybody can access the files, right? So that exactly what is happening. Now let me showcase you the jobs first, right? So let me go back to the workspace, and if you go to jobs and pipeline, you see that there are two more things got deployed, right? One will be like, if you remember, I talked about the development mode is equal to development. Your username will be prefix, right? So this is how you'll know that this is a dev job, right? And if you open this, you will see that it will talk about that this is connected to Databricks as asset bundle. That means that you won't be able to do any changes on top of it, right? So if you see that all these are like grayed out, that means you're not allowed to change it. How you can change it? You can disconnect from source and then you should be able to change it. But whatever change you did, that won't be reflected to your original job. That means if I deploy this bundle again, the things will be overrated. That is expected. That how it should be in the production, right? So nobody should be able to come here and do some changes. It should be done from the CI/CD pipeline. But for prod pipeline, you will see that it has deployed end-to-end project update. Yeah, basically this is the thing. So the project name I have given as updated. So basically this is how for the production it will deploy like this, right? So I hope this makes sense. A question, you should have a question right now, right? Like, yes, Anirvan, you are doing this with Databricks CLI, but in place of production deployment, you do not want to use the Databricks CLI, and a person should not be there to deploy this, validate this, and then deploy it, right? This is where you will be using the CI/CD functionality of GitHub Actions. For GitHub Action, there are only one thing that you have to take care of. You have to create a folder called as .github. So basically for GitHub Action, this is the nomenclature that you have to follow. You have to place your CI/CD code inside GitHub so that it can be added as actions in GitHub Action. So I'll be showcasing that. So for me, what I'll do is like I'll create two files because I have like two different environments. One is deploy dev, one is deploy prod. Let me showcase you that how that looks like. So there are different parts here. First is like this is just the name, and what you are saying is if any changes happens on the dev branch, you just run this particular pipeline, right? Similar for prod, what it is saying there, if any changes happens in main branch, you just deploy it to prod. That exactly what is saying. This is basically saying that, right? So let me go back to dev, and it will say that okay, for I have some jobs which should run on Ubuntu latest, so this will be some VM that GitHub Action will create, and there are few steps that you need to follow for this CI/CD to work, right? First, you checking out the code because in that particular Ubuntu machine, all your code should be there so that it can run your code, right? And then there is an action called as Databricks setup Databricks CLI that uses this Databricks setup CLI main. So this is given by Databricks action itself, so you can use. So whatever we did, so whatever I told you, right, you have to install the Databricks CLI. So this particular step does that. Then you have a deploy to dev. You have to set two particular secret, that is Databricks host and Databricks token. And if you remember where we are setting up our Databricks CLI, we have given two things, right? Host and token. So basically this is how you can configure that particular token, and this is coming from secret module from GitHub Actions, right? So this is like an environmental setting, whatever we configure the Databricks CLI to. And the last thing is running the Databricks bundle deploy, and you can give the target as dev. So for as this is a dev, the target is dev, but if it is a prod, the target will be prod, right? Once you are done with this, you can push the changes. So whatever changes you did, right, so you push all the changes to your GitHub. Then you can go to GitHub, go back to your GitHub account. You will see that once you have created this, there are, if you go to action, because I own this, so I have this settings and I do have a actions. You will see that two new actions have been created here, right? One is deploy to dev, deploy to prod. How it is coming? It is coming from this particular name, right? So you are given the name here. So these actions will be created automatically, but this won't work right now because I have to set two more secrets for it to work, because it needs some credentials, right? GitHub needs some access credentials for it to work. To do that, go to settings and then use secrets and variables. You will see something called as actions, and in action, in repository secret, you have to create two more tokens, right? So basically new repository secret, give your secret name like Databricks host, and give your host secret like Databricks host here. Similarly for Databricks token, give you it as a Databricks token like this, and give your token here. Once you're done, that means that this repository had access to two variables, that is database host and database token. And in practice, you might want to use different tokens, right? Basically that you will do, because different workspaces will have different tokens. So basically you can mention something like database dev host, database dev token, database prod host, database prod token. But for this demo purpose, I'm using the same variable, right? Once you're done, you're good to go. Now you'll see that what I did was I've created different branches. You see there I have some future branches, I have some dev, I have some main. So main is like for prod deployment, dev is for dev related work, and future engine. So this is the workflow that people usually follow, right? So basically what you do is like you create some future branch, right? Suppose I'm doing some changes. I'll create this from development branch, and suppose I come here, I do some changes on suppose this particular GitHub file, right? So this is the new line I've used, and I'll say like I updated the git ignore, right? So this is like some changes that I currently did. Now what I'm gonna do is I'm gonna create a pull request from this VHF branch to our dev branch, because that's how the workflow should be, right? So I'll say that I'm creating a pull request. You'll see that once this pull requests have been merged, so let me merge this pull request. When this is merged, you'll say go to actions. You'll see that there is one action that have started, that is deploy to dev, right? So if you click on this and it failed, let's see why. Let me just debug this and get back to you. Oh, I see the issue, right? So basically the workspace mentioned in the dev branch was different. So let me go to the feature branch. What was that? This was the feature branch, right? So let me go to the Databricks YAML. So this is the Databricks YAML, and you said the host is different, right? So that's the issue. So let me go to Databricks YAML. This is the host that I should be using. So let me just replace this host. Okay, this is a newer thing in GitHub. So I'll change this host. So make sure that you change it or you'll get that error, right? Then I'll commit the changes, right? So now you'll pull the changes from features to some changes, and you want to deploy to dev first. You see that you change this particular thing, you merge the changes, and you go to GitHub Actions. Now you'll see that new thing started, right? So this will have the deploy stages, and it will have all these things, right? Deploy to dev, so uploading bundle resources, updating deployment completed, right? So this is how you'll deploy to dev. Now how do you deploy to prod? You'll create one more pull request from dev to this is main branch, right? So now you'll create a pull request. You'll see the changes. If the changes are fine, this is fine. So this is not the easiest way to deploy something in prod because I have admin privileges, so I'm doing anything I want. But yes, let's go to actions. You'll see that there is deployed a prod changes, because in GitHub Actions we have mentioned that if there are any changes on main branch, run this particular pipeline. So you see that it has been deployed, right? So deployed to production, you can just say like, okay, updating deployment state, right? So this, see how like once you understand the flow, this is very easy to think about. One thing that I wanted to show, that once this deployment is done, if you go back to your workspaces, not everyone show you this, right? So these are some of the things that you should always see, right? Let's go back to workspace. You'll see that there is something called a dot bundle. You'll see two bundles, right? One will see inside your Databricks, this one the user, because this is the development, and one you will see outside of it. This is for production deployment. You will see that I have the bundle name here, and you will see that this is the target, this is the prod, and you'll have all the artifacts here, right? No, you will see all the artifacts inside the files. So you see that I have included everything, whatever is required, it included all the files, right? So this is a easier way for you to debug that whenever I'm deploying something, if it is updating here or not. Sometime it might happen that it did not upload, maybe there was some issue with the bundle. So you can come here, you can say, okay, I did some changes into my silver, did it do the changes here? No, then there is some issue, right? So this is just a debug step I mentioned, right? So I hope that this was helpful for you to take your code from a Databricks workflow, deploy through Database asset bundles, automating it through GitHub Actions. And I just wanted to make sure that you are learning all this. I hope that you're enjoying the content, and I'm putting a lot of effort for you guys. So just give it a like and let me know in the comment section how's the content, how you like this type of content, right? So with this, this particular section is done. We'll move to the next section now. So with this, you're able to create the CI/CD pipeline. Now you have the ATL in place, but how do you represent your analysis to the business user? There could be like different ways. One of the most popular way is to visualize the data and showcase it to business user, and another is that is getting very popular using some GNA capability, right? So if you talk to your data in natural language, business user can ask like, what is the readmission rate, and if the system can give you the result with just using natural language, that is something that the business user really need. So any business user or like your chief marketing officer will not come to Databricks and they will write SQL or they will write Python to get the data analysis, right? So this is something that Databricks can help you to do that. So first way that we'll see, like using Genie to get the insights from as using just a natural language, right? So to do that, go to Genie. So what Genie is, in Genie you can ask question about your data and natural language. So whatever question that will ask, Genie will convert this, and the Genie can understand your data semantic, and it can understand like, okay, what are the tables I need to use to get this particular answer. So we'll see that in action now. So first thing first, you create the space first. You need to connect the data. What are the data that you want to use to get some insights, right? So basically we'll just select two things. One is the silver layer, that's a fact visit data, and another is the hospital disease KPI. So basically we'll give Genie access to this two table, and we'll ask some question from Genie. So I'll just create it. Once this is done, you will I'll keep this name as like healthcare analysis, right? Analysis Genie, right? So this is the space for me. And if you see on the right side, you will mention that it has access to two different tables, right? So table type, And you can also give some instruction to the Genie. So say general instruction if you want Genie to follow. So this is like a system prompt that you are giving to Genie, right? That okay, give me this result for this in this particular format. Do not include this one. So those type of general instruction you can give it here. And there are different more advanced things like joins, SQL expression, or SQL queries. You can add some SQL queries for in the Genie space, so that next time if someone else asks the same type of question, then Genie will use the same query. So all those things are advanced thing, but will not be using that. And we also have a setting. So basically settings like you can add some sample question which you want, like some of the sample question which you think that the marketing people or finance people will ask this particular Genie. You can add those sample question here, so that it can they can easily click that particular question and they can get the answer, right? So with that, like this is all it needs to create a Genie application. And what we did, we just added two table. Now let's start asking some questions. So the first question we'll ask is like, show me the hospitals with readmissions rate above 20%, right? So this is the first thing that I want to learn. So Genie will understand the question first, and it will find the right data. It will, if it is drafting a step-by-step plan to calculate it, and it found the answer automatically, right? So it found that there are two hospitals with resubmission rate above 20%. Both Manipal Hospital and Kokilaben Dhirubhai Ambani have a readmission rate of 50%, right? So it got the data also. It will also try to plot if it is plottable like this, right? Now you might be thinking that is it the correct query that it is generating. You can also see the code from here. Just click on show code. You will see the query that is writing, right? If there are any issues, you can do the changes here, right? So if you think that this query is not correct, you can fix it and you can run it. So Genie will understand and it will fix the issue, right? So this is the first question. Let's ask something like this, right? So what's the average length of stay for heart failure patients, right? So basically we identified this particular case. So let me ask this. Genie will understand and it will get the query and it will find the right answer for you. So okay, so the average length of stay for patients based on the available data is 4.25 days, right? So that's the data. Let's ask something interesting now. Like which patients had the longest stay and then were readmitted, right? So this is one of the interesting question that we can ask Genie. Okay, now we found the answer that the longest stay was 6 days by Kabir and 5 days for Ria, and Arav is 4 days. Like it will get you all the person who had the longest stay. And to see the code, you can just see the code and you see that it started writing complex queries now, right? It started using CTs and you can review this code. If something is wrong, you can fix it and can run your analysis, right? Let's see one of the question that your executives or your business folks would be very interested on, right? So are we improving or declining month over month, right? So basically we want to see if the readmission that is happening are, if I am taking some action against it, suppose I am fixing some issues in the hospital, is it improving the situation over month by month, right? This is a very critical API for any folks to understand if the campaign or if they're doing something good, is it affecting this particular data, right? You see that if you ask something like this vague question, I haven't defined what exactly I'm looking for. So it will say that okay, could you clarify in which metric you want to analyze month over month, such as resubmission rate, average length of stay, or total visits. So I want to do it for the readmission rate, right? Basically this is the interesting thing that I need to know. So it will say that okay, see, the monthly readmission rate has fluctuated over the past 4 months, ranging from 0% in February to 100% in April. Notable data points include, so this is the data point, there is no consistent trend, but April shows a significant spike in readmission rate compared to previous month, right? So it will show you the graph also, right? So you see that how valuable it is for any business person to understand if it is we are doing good or if we are doing bad. So it clearly shows that we are not walking towards it and we need to put more energy into fixing this, right? So this is, you see, like how easy it was to have this analysis just using Genie. You don't need to know SQL, you don't need to do a lot of advanced SQL functions, you don't need to write a lot of SQL code to get this, right? So I'm just asking the question in plain English and Genie is able to give me answer, right? So one thing is like you can always, so any user can log into Genie space, they can go to Genie and they can open the Genie space and start asking the question. But a lot of folks like marketing folks, finance folks are not bothered, they should not be bothered about what else exists here, right? So this is very clutter for them. They do not worry about what's the compute, what's the job pipeline, what's the catalog. So is there a way to give a very simplified interface for those folks who are just interested on getting this access to Genie? That exactly what we are giving with Databricks One. So if you click on this one, and you see there are two things coming. One is the lake house. So whatever view that you see, it is basically for data engineer, data scientists, ML folks, AI folks, right? So basically whatever do in Databricks Workspace, it is for them. But if you want a very simplified way of connecting to your Genie space or doing some visualization, you use Databricks One. So you click on this one, it will open a new interface that database called as Databricks One. And you see that I have access to dashboard, Genie space apps also. So a user will just see this, they will not see anything else. So I can just go to that Genie space. So if I'm connecting, I see that I do have access to two Genie space. I'll just open this and it will just open the Genie space for you. It will not have anything else in the sidebar. This is just for interacting with Genie space. So this is a cleaner way of interacting with database, so that you don't have to worry about other function that exist. Because for finance folks or for someone who takes a business decision, knowing ETL like what's happening in database doesn't matter for them. They just want to get the analysis, right? So so this is one of the interface. So another one is like, which is the most popular one, is visualizing your data, right? So you can always connect from other visualization tool like Power BI, Tableau. You can connect those external tools to Databricks Delta table and you can do the analysis. But you always have to pay licensing cost to use it. For Databricks, we have an inbuilt dashboarding tool. We call it as AI BI dashboards that you can use to visualize your data directly from Databricks. So you're not paying any licensing cost to use AI/BI dashboard. You just are paying for the compute cost. Basically, whenever you are running some query against the compute, whatever that is charged, you are just paying that amount, right? How do you do that? Let me go back to my workspace. I'll switch back to Lakehouse view. I'll go to dashboard, and this is where you are creating the dashboard. So I'll just create one new dashboard here. Let me name this as healthcare dashboard, right? First thing first, you have to select the SQL warehouse, right? So whatever, so we do have a SQL warehouse in place that you can just select it and you can start running it. Second thing, you have to add the data, right? So what data it should use to get the result. So you go to data, you add a data source. So basically you can use create from SQL, or you can also upload a file, and on top of that file you can start visualizing it, right? So add data sources. This is similar to what we have seen in Genie space. So you can just select the tables, right? And okay, it understood that this is the data, and you can see the data here, right? Now I can go back, I can create a new page. Maybe I can name this as dashboard view, right? Now I can start visualizing the data, right? So there are different options. You can use this action to select it. There is a function called as add visualization, or you can add some text box. So basically, if you want to do like, this is my dashboard for business. Dashboard, I forgot the spelling, that's okay. This is the dashboard for business, right? You can also add some filter around, like if you're trying to add some filters here, you can also do that. So the field, you can select the field, like suppose you want to add some filters on top of hospital, like suppose hospital name, you can do that, right? So it will get you all the hospital that you got, it will get it automatically, like the usual stuff how you do in it, how you do in any visualization tool, right? Now this is the next part, why this is called as AI BI, because it has the AI capabilities to create your dashboards automatically. So if you just click this and just click here, now you see that it's saying that ask the assistant to create a chart, right? And it will also give you some of the suggestion that you can use, right? Let me just try the first option, that what is the total visits by hospital, and you see that it will automatically generate the visualization for you. You are just asking the question in plain English and it started giving the answer. You see that, okay, this is the total visit, so for this hospital 22211. So you can accept or reject it, or if you're not happy with, you can ask some other question and it will give you the result. So I'm happy with this visualization, so I'm good with this, right? Just for your, like, this is not a visualization tutorial, but just wanted to give you some picture like how you can customize it. You see that on the right side, once you select one panel, you'll get all the user stuff, right? So for example, I can change the color to this, so this is good. I can add some labels, right? I can use some tooltip, right? So all those things are there. Also, if you're not happy with suppose the visualization, you can change the visualization type, like box to area, or maybe box type, and all those things you can do it, right? So I'm happy with the bar, so I'll just stick on the bar chart, right? So this is the usual way that how you do the visualization. And in AI BI dashboard, you have all the fancy whatever you see in the usual Power BI or Tableau tool, you will see all those visualization type. So let me ask this question, right? What the readmissions by hospital and diagnosis? You see that, okay, I got Kokilabe in Dhirubhai Hospital. The readmission that is happening due to chest pain, and the count is 1. Similarly, for Manipal, it is getting infected by kidney infection, right? So I hope that you are getting an idea like how do you visualize it. And visualization is something that you can do a lot of fancy visualization. You can talk to a business user like what type of visualization they would like to see, maybe. So it is always like two-way, right? You have to talk your business needs to provide you the feedback for your visualization. If something is good, you keep it. If something they want change, or if you think that it should be changed, you do the changes, right? So I'll not do more visualization, but I hope that you are getting idea like how easy it is to just ask the question to a AI dashboards, and it will generate the diagrams automatically. So once you do that, you have to publish this dashboard for users to see it. So you can just do like publish, and you can just select the first options. Publishing is done. You can always give access to other user like principal, admin, or workspace users. And you see that, like if you see workspace user, I can give them all like view access, right? So this is something you can do. So we are good. And you see that even you can share the groups to anyone in my Mac account to view. Usually for non-sensitive dashboards, you always do that. If you want some dashboard which should be accessible throughout your organization, you can use this. And now you can give the link to any users if you want, right? So that's a way. And you can always access this AIBI dashboard through the Databricks one. So if I go back to Databricks one, I see in the dashboard section I have two dashboards. One I've created previously, one is something that you can do it now, right? So this was the dashboard that I created earlier. So I think this is all I wanted to share in this particular tutorial. So what did we achieve? So you see that this is how we got the problem statement, and from this problem statement we did a lot of stuff, and finally we reached to here, right? So I know that this was a long journey, but I think this is really important for you to understand the whole journey, because it does not start with architecture, right? It does not start with just creating some stuff, doing some ETL. It start with just plain English problem statement. Then you walk through like step by step. You There are like different steps, and that you have to follow to get here, right? And being a data engineer, being a full stack engineer is getting really important, that you know the whole journey of a data engineer. Once you have all this picture, I'm telling you that you'll be very confident working in the project. I hope that this particular video was useful for you. I have spent a lot of time and energy into this video. So if you're liking this video so far, and if you like the whole journey, just give me a like and comment your thoughts, like what type of tutorial that you would like to see. And if you have any thought about this video, just do the comment in the comment section. And if you can, please share this video with your network so that it reaches more viewers, right? So I hope that this was helpful, and see you in the next one.